What is success for Bill Belichick at UNC?
Winning championships. I don't think anyone wanted to hire him for the way he envisaged the job.
I don't believe in this Chiefs team unless Mahomes is 100%.
There is a lot of murmuring that Andy Reid needs to take some responsibility for this injury, and I just think he was playing scared in that situation.
I think they're going to get knocked out before the Super Bowl this year. And I'll be honest, part of it, I have Chiefs fatigue. I said this about Surtain. He turns opposing receivers into Chick-fil-A. They're never open on Sunday.
Detroit is here because of Dan Campbell. Philly, for my money, is a team in the NFC right now. And if the Los Angeles Rams win the Super Bowl, I will buy you as many pints as you want in one sitting. I will do that because neither of those things is happening.
All right, Brian, we've got to start off with Kansas City this week. I feel like they've started the show so many times this year, but 21-7 victory over Cleveland Browns. It's their most convincing win of the season outside of the one over the 49ers. First time this season that they've held a 3-score lead over someone. In theory, we should be sitting here going, the Chiefs are back. And yet Patrick Mahomes, we can see the moment where this ankle injury occurs during the game where he's hit with the high-low tackle and then taken down to the locker room. And Ian Rappaport tweets immediately afterwards that he's week to week. And we know from our experience that week to week means he's out this week and we'll see about next week. They've got these 2 games, 3 in an 11-day span, including Sunday. They play on Saturday, they play on Christmas Day. They're big, big games against teams that are in the AFC playoff race. But they've got this 2-game buffer for the number 1 seed. So how big is Patrick Mahomes' ankle injury to the Chiefs season now?
Number one, Will, beating the Cleveland Browns doesn't prove anything, right? So they could have won. They could have won 50-0. The Chiefs would not be bad because they beat a horrible Browns team. But I will make your point for you. Patrick Mahomes did not have to win that game. The Chiefs, that game was done. And so for Mahomes to get injured in that game is a shame. And I'm immediately brought back to where we've been before with the Chiefs, to where the Chiefs are rolling, the Chiefs are starting to find it, the playoffs are coming, and Patrick Mahomes gets hurt. And this has become a recurring theme. And I think about a Super Bowl pass where Patrick Mahomes could barely stay in the game, and there's the incredible NFL film footage where he's in pain, he's trying to get through that, and playoff games where he's had to come out. I was doing a story for talkSPORT, writing about backup quarterbacks I've forgotten about before. Chad Henne, right? Chad Henne at one point was guiding the Chiefs to the playoffs because Mahomes couldn't stay on the field. There's no way around it. This is a huge deal if he is not 100% and it's recurring. If it is just day to day, week to week, and it's a mild high ankle sprain and he is fine and they likely get the bye, right? So they're gonna get an extra free week and he's fine for the divisional round and he's in rhythm, it's okay. If Patrick Mahomes, again, has an ankle injury and it's holding him back, and the Chiefs have been wobbly and unsteady this entire year, the Chiefs are not back, and this could be a huge deal because it's not about winning their division. It's not about getting number 1 seed. It's about winning the Super Bowl 3 straight times for the first team in NFL history to do that, Will, and they need to be at 100%, and they have not been at 100% the entire season.
Look, they have a record number of 1-score wins this year. We've talked endlessly about winning games because a rookie centre missnaps the ball, because of a blocked field goal, there was this presentation of the Mahomes injury on Sunday of have the Chiefs run out of luck? Is that what's now happened after such a fortunate season for them, after being the most fortunate 13-1 team in NFL history? Has this golden chalice of a year just absolutely fallen off the edge? And actually, I think the exact opposite of that. I think that you've been presented with this perfect opportunity. Thanks to the Bills being 2 games back on you, you know that you can rest him against the Texans this weekend. You can bring in Carson Wentz, who in theory is a pretty high-end backup.
Should be solid, yeah.
And you go against a Texans team who defensively just put up their best game probably for 8 weeks. But prior to that, for the 2 months before, had not looked like the superpower of early in the season.
And C.J. Stroud's still throwing for about 130 yards. He still is out of rhythm right now.
The Texans are beatable with Carson Wentz. And if you win that game, you then look at the Steelers on Christmas Day with that fearsome pass rush and the terrifying idea of throwing out a partially injured Patrick Mahomes against the Steelers. And you go, we've got a 2-game buffer now. Let's throw Carson Wentz out there again. Let's wrap Pat Mahomes in cotton wool. Let's keep him in the freezer until we get to playoff time and then bring him out fully healthy, run the gamut, go win a 3rd Super Bowl.
Yeah. In America, you wrap him in bubble wrap, not in cotton wool or whatever heck that reference was. But I love when I agree with you. I completely agree with you. It is not worth it. Patrick Mahomes has to be healthy because the Chiefs team, we said this all season on this show, has not been good enough. They have been lucky. They didn't deserve to be undefeated. All these things that we've been saying since September, this only works, and you only find it in the playoffs when you have Lamar Jackson out there, Josh Allen out there, maybe Jalen Hurts, Jared Goff. You have to beat the best of the best, and Mahomes will have to carry them. It's not going to be Travis Kelce all of a sudden having 200-yard games. You're not going to have a running back running for 200 yards. DeAndre Hopkins isn't going to throw it back to 2015. This has to be Patrick Mahomes in the end, fourth quarter, crunch time, carrying this team, finding the magic, being Showtime Mahomes. He has to be healthy. They don't need to win these next couple games. They still have a buffer, and you get the bye, and then you have a bye week. He just needs to be 100% for the playoffs.
Let me throw, because I think I know your answer based on what you've said there, but let me throw this hypothetical out at you. You lose to the Texans on Saturday. You've got a 4-day turnaround till Christmas Day football.
On Netflix, on streaming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And live on talkSPORT and talkSPORT 2, don't forget. You've got 4 days to prepare. You know that a loss probably loses you the number 1 seed. You lose the bye week, you lose home field advantage. You have to play an extra game, and you have to go to Buffalo probably for the AFC Championship game. Do you risk Patrick Mahomes at 70% of his best against a tough Steelers defense, or do you say, I'd rather take the tougher road with a healthy Mahomes than try and get ourselves the easy path to the Super Bowl?
I want a healthy Mahomes because I will go back to last year. Last year, the Chiefs were 9-6, and they were a mess, and the receivers are dropping balls. And I mean, there was much more controversy about the Chiefs this time last year. Mahomes couldn't trust anybody. They had to work their way through the entire playoffs on the road, right? And they did it all because Patrick Mahomes was 100%, and Patrick Mahomes was able to carry them. And in the Super Bowl against the 49ers, as you know very well, he found the magic at the end. I need a healthy Mahomes. The Chiefs are not good enough this year. They don't have enough talent. They don't have enough depth. The defense still carries them at times. I don't believe in this Chiefs team unless Mahomes is 100%. And I that's absolutely how I feel. And I will not get shaken off that ledge because they just are not good enough. Mahomes will have to carry them, and he's got to be 100% to do that.
So this offense has been a problem all year. Like, this isn't a new thing, and Mahomes hasn't been playing at his best, and he's had to bail them out in a lot of situations. You talked about that Super Bowl with the Eagles, right, where he goes down with the ankle injury, and yet in the second half has 2 third-down scrambles for 20-plus yards, which end up going and winning them the game. Like, he is Superman. He is this guy who just, it does not matter what happens. He's got this Michael Jordan-esque flu game ability of just showing up in the moment that matters, even if they've not been performing at their best, right? And I've got to caveat this by saying Andy Reid is, for me, a walk-in Hall of Fame at the moment he retires. He's arguably on the Mount Rushmore of NFL coaches, top 4 all-time guys. You could even put that conversation between him and Bill Belichick for the number 1 all-time, as far as I'm concerned, if he goes on and wins a couple more titles, particularly. So how does a man that experienced know how bad the offense has been, sit there and watch them go 3 scores up against the Cleveland Browns and say, do you know what we're going to do? We're going to keep throwing the ball. We're going to put Patrick Mahomes, who's been under pressure more than any other quarterback in the NFL over the last 3 weeks. 37 quarterback pressures in 3 weeks. 37 quarterback hits, in the space of the last 3 weeks. He has been battered. He's been bruised. You're up big against a bad football team. How is Andy Reid, the genius, not going, do you know what we should probably do in this second half is run the ball, not throw it 40 times and keep putting Patrick Mahomes in danger? And it's interesting, it doesn't feel like it's happened on a national and international level yet. But in the local media in Kansas City, there is a lot of murmuring that Andy Reid needs to take some responsibility for this injury and has potentially put them in a position where, despite this season, which has given them all of the fortune in the world, might have put them in a position where the most important person in that room isn't going to be there for them.
It's a great point. My answer will be that Andy Reid is an NFL head coach. And I've spent decades watching NFL head coaches do the same exact thing. Very rarely does anyone get taken out. Lamar Jackson rarely comes out. Tom Brady used to rarely come out. Peyton Manning. They just don't do it. There is always the fear. You can score so quickly in the NFL right now. Kickoffs, you're getting the ball back at the 30-yard line. You have one play, chunk yards, all these things. Were they going to lose to the Browns? No, but NFL head coaches are just, it's in the blood, Will. that they don't take their quarterback out until like the last possession, right? I've never liked that. I've watched it happen to teams that I've covered. I watched it happen in the playoffs. He should have been out of that game.
You don't even need to take him out of the game. You just need to be
just
running
run the ball. They
just
don't do that. They're always looking for more. They're always trying to perfect things. Andy Reid is thinking, I need to get the offense humming for the playoffs. That's what's going through his brain. I totally agree with you. He screwed that up. But this is what NFL head coaches do.
But they weren't even. Like, it's not like I'm saying run the damn ball, which is what they should have done. And they're playing a left guard at left tackle. And I thought Joe Tierney had a decent game, considering he's playing horribly out of position. And you're getting to him time after time again. And it's only thanks to Mahomes' genius that he's not been sacked 5, 6, 7 times in that game, because he's constantly seeing the pressure, getting the ball away, being hit after it gets away. But even on the injury itself, he's still done the right thing and got rid of the ball. Yeah. The problem is that they weren't even going, right, okay, the run game's not working, but let's go dink and dunk. Let's just put it over the middle, little 5-yard pickups. Let's just get some first downs, go into a bit of a rhythm offense. We're more than good enough to do that. We've got the players. They're going for these chunk yards downfield against a terrible Browns team. They, at the end of the
They're
first
always
half,
looking for more. They all are, but this is what they all do. And I mean, you even seen this in the NBA. Stars rarely get taken out. I've always been the opinion, you're 13-1. You almost got the number 1 seed locked up. The second you can start running the ball and just move on from that game. That game, no one will remember that game except for the game. That's where Patrick Mahomes got hurt again. And if they don't win the Super Bowl, Chiefs fans will look back at that game and be like, "That's where it went wrong." You're 100%. They just rarely ever do it. That's my only explanation.
There is an incident at the end of the first half where the Chiefs get the ball down to about the 10-yard line, 2nd and short from the 10. 3rd and short, in fact. So on the 2nd down, they get it down to that point, and there's over a minute left on the clock, and they've got 3 timeouts in their pocket, right? They let the clock run all the way down. They then attempt to run the ball for a first down, panic, fail to get the first down, look like they might settle for a field goal, end up going for it on 4th down instead, don't use the timeouts. It's a complete and utter game management mess, and they end up scoring no points there and going in 14-0 at the half. Now, against the Browns and Jameis Winston, I think 14-0 was probably a big enough lead to win anyway. But I just watched that and thought, this is getting in your head. This is not the confident Andy Reid that goes out in overtime of the Super Bowl and knows exactly what he's doing against the 49ers. Knows that I've been building up this jet sweep play the whole game, and I know what their defensive tendencies have become, and I'm going to run Mahomes for 40 yards up the right sideline, and they're not going to see it coming. That one of the great play callers of our time, and I just think he was playing scared in that situation. And you add the injury on top of that, I think when they come up against a team of the quality of the Bills in the playoffs, or even those teams in and around, we're going to talk Denver in a little bit, but even like the Ravens who can be brilliant on their day, the Steelers who can be brilliant on their day. These are teams who I think the Chiefs might struggle against in January, with Mahomes or not.
If Mahomes is 100%, they should be fine, and I've been making that all year. But look, Andy Reid had game management problems, time management problems when he was in Philly. He was notorious for that. I covered Andy Reid with Kansas City when he still was being questioned by Chiefs fans and NFL fans before they started becoming a dynasty in Kansas City. Andy Reid is not perfect. Andy Reid is an NFL head coach. Bill Belichick has had time management problems. But I'm sorry, acting like Andy Reid is going to hold the Chiefs back in the playoffs when they've been the best team running for years now, that's not going to happen.
Right, we will talk a little bit more Mahomes, and we're going to turn our attention to the topic of Denver Bo Nix. They're basically a playoff team already at this point, with a big victory against the Chargers on Sunday night. So Troy Renck joins us up next on The Rundown. All right, still to come on the show, we're going to talk Bill Belichick. Ollie Connolly joins us, and we're going to get into the NFC. The Lions no longer the favourites in that conference. But joining us now to talk about one of the up-and-coming teams in the AFC, in the Denver Broncos, and I'm sure plenty more as well. From the Denver Post, the brilliant Troy Renck joins us. Troy, how are you doing, sir?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Look, we really appreciate you joining us, Troy. And look, before we get into Denver, we've just been talking about Mahomes. We've been talking about the Chiefs, this injury. It's a team that you cover twice a year within your division. From what you've seen of them this year, are you concerned that they're no longer the superpower, or do you just think they're going to figure it out come January?
Yeah, I'm a tough guy to ask. The Chiefs have beaten the Broncos 17 of the last 18 games they played them. So, listen, this isn't the best Chiefs team during this span of dominance. They've won, 9 straight AFC West titles. Ever since Peyton Manning retired, the Chiefs have taken over the division. But this year, more than any, they've gotten lucky. They've had 6 walk-off wins with 3 different kickers. Brian knows from our baseball background, typically in sports, it starts to even out at some point. They're not going to continue to get this lucky against good teams. I think they're going to get knocked out before the Super Bowl this year. And I'll be honest, part of it, I have Chiefs fatigue. And I like Patrick Mahomes. I've known about Patrick Mahomes since LaTroy Hawkins pitched for the Rockies. So I've known about Pat since he was 12, 13 years old. I love the guy. I'm not over Travis Kelce. I have no issue with Taylor Swift. It's just, we're over the Chiefs, just like I got tired of the Patriots dominating. So I just think this is the year, the fact that they're not great offensively, it's just going to end up costing them in a field goal game in the playoffs.
Look, I want to pick your brain on Bo Nix, but just before I do so, I want to talk about the play of the game at the weekend, the ridiculous reverse pass. Like, I saw somebody say on The Ringer, which I thought was absolutely sensational, is the Colts can't complete passes at a rate of 40% this season. How do they expect to complete 3 passes on one play? It's absolutely ridiculous. But Nick Bonito is this guy who has just appeared out of nowhere for many people, nationally and internationally. And now Denver fans are calling for him to be Defensive Player of the Year. Is he and this Denver defense good enough that they can prop up and take this team and win a playoff game?
Yeah, it's funny that throwback pass wasn't even the dumbest play of the game. That was Jonathan Taylor dropping the ball before the goal line. That changed the game. I mean, it's going to be 20-7 and the stadium's on mute, and I think Denver loses the game. But they caught a break. They haven't caught many over the last 8 years. They caught a break. But the funny thing about that throwback pass is you're throwing to a receiver who doesn't even catch the ball well. So he's over there gripping it like a little kid for like 30 seconds trying to get the perfect grip. It's like, it's not Nerf. You got to throw the ball. And Bonito makes this unbelievable play. But when we talk about Nick Bonito, guys, he's a guy from Oklahoma, second-round pick. He has unbelievable get-off, this first step. He has bend. Brian, remember, Elvis Dumerville is kind of the comp to him. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have Von Miller's body type. It's more like Elvis, but he can get under. He's got that Gumby nature to him. But early in his career, he couldn't support the run. He barely played. You couldn't put him on the field on first and second down because he just got steamrolled. Well, he got smarter. He got a little bigger. He can support the edge, and their coverage is way better on the back end. It gives him a tick more time. But he's in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation for a couple of reasons. One, he has 2 touchdowns, including one on Monday night in front of a national audience. That shouldn't matter. It always does in voting. Brian covered J.J. Watt. When Watt was winning awards, it's because he's deflecting passes, recovering fumbles, and getting touchdowns, doing things normal defensive ends, defensive tackles don't do. So if Bonito gets the 15 sacks with 2 touchdowns and 4 passes knocked down, he's got a shot. But the irony is, if you ask scouts and NFL personnel people that I talk to, Pat Surtain is their best defensive player at cornerback because he makes all the pieces fit together. But they barely, I've said this about Surtain, and I'll say it till he probably retires. He turns opposing receivers into Chick-fil-A. They're never open on Sunday. That's who he is. And they never pass on his side. So he's going to have these stats where he's got 14 passes defensed and 4 interceptions. That's a difficult vote for someone who doesn't watch the Broncos for Defensive Player of the Year. So he might be their best defensive player, and Bonito wins Defensive Player of the Year. Wouldn't that be something? But they're not a great defense. They're a good defense. The difference this year is they stopped the run. That's the difference. Last year, even when they got hot, they won 5 straight games. They were a bad team that got hot because during that time, they had 15 takeaways in 5 games. That never happens. That's like a home run hitter having 10 home runs in 4 games. It just doesn't happen. And as soon as they stopped getting takeaways, they started losing again. The difference this year is they stopped the run for the most part, and that gives them a chance every game to turn teams into one-dimensional sectors and gives their pass rush a chance to get home.
All right, Troy, I want to get into this because you know this, and we watch it from afar, and I've been fascinated all year by Bo Nix, and I'm sure you've answered all these questions, but Sean Payton saw something. I mean, he took a risk. He did, basically leverage his name saying, hey, I see something in this guy, but you're around him regularly. What is Bo Nix like? How has he been able to do this? And how does he keep getting better to the point that he's in the Offensive Rookie of the Year conversation? The Broncos are on the verge of the playoffs. And we can talk about defense and stopping and running all these things, but none of this is happening without Bo Nix working out for Denver.
Yeah, listen, Russell Wilson wasn't terrible last year. He had 26 touchdowns, 8 picks. He did not run an offense Sean Payton wanted to run. Russell Wilson's at his best, throwing moon balls and scribbling outside the lines. Sean Payton wants Drew Brees. He wants a quarterback that plays on time and on target. And that's what he sees in Bo Nix. It's what he saw in March. When they went up there, he threw like 85 passes for him, Brian, in their March workout in person in Eugene, and 84 by Peyton's estimation, he told me, were on target. Wow. He's smart. He's disciplined. He basically has no vices. He doesn't curse. He's tied to his football, his family, and his faith. He keeps everything very simple. And to his credit, even though he's been the best player on every team he's ever been on since 8th grade, right? People forget, when he went to Auburn, he was their Tim Tebow. His dad, I watched in college, Patrick Mahomes, like he was going to save the Auburn program. And by his 3rd year, it had gone so sideways. He's getting benched. He's getting hurt. He transfers to Oregon, which can't be much different in terms of geographically and culturally than Auburn, Alabama. Mm-hmm. And he reinvents himself under Kenny Dillingham, the ASU head coach. Kenny's like, I'm not going to overcoach you. I want you to take ownership. Well, Bo started calling protections there. Bo was basically the offensive coordinator on the field. He brought a lot of that to the Broncos. But his teammates will tell you the secret sauce with Bo Nix is discipline, both in a game and outside in the lift, the way he prepares during the week. But he's able to blend humility with confidence. He's not overstepping his role. This is a team with a lot of older guys on offense. So he's an E.F. Hutton. He only talks when he needs to. He doesn't overcoach, and guys love that about him. He just waits, and then every once in a while he jumps in. But he's the same guy that got into Sean Payton's face on October 6th against the Raiders, yelling at Sean Payton. Teammates love that. Even Payton loved it because he loves the creative friction. Mm-hmm. He wants you to come back at him. But that's the day he became the quarterback. And then the way he played at Kansas City and even Baltimore to lost, that's when he became their franchise quarterback. For a series of 3-4 games, he was their best player on the field. Not on offense or defense, the best player on the field. And now he's just got to get to the finish line. Teams are making adjustments. These last 2 games, I think he's pressed a little bit. He's got 5 picks in 2 games. He had 2 in his previous 10. They need to slow the game down. Sean Payton needs to push the brakes a little bit and get boring again. They need to run the football a little better to be fair to Nix. Because when Nix gets into trouble, they drop back 40 to 45 times. That's not fair to him as a rookie. That's what happened early. That's what's happened these last 2 games. They need to get more balance offensively.
That's what I've seen. I have to say, the thing I really picked up there and the thing I've really seen from Bo Nix is the first 5-6 games of the season weren't great. You saw some development, but it was very much, this was the rocky start we were expecting. And then you saw that stretch you talked about where initially they were throwing him out there with a very stripped back offense and he did well. And then they let him take over a little bit. And it's only until these last 2 games where he stumbled a little. But there was a 4-5 game stretch where you're going, wow, this guy looks like a starting NFL quarterback, which I have to say, watching him at Oregon, seeing where he was picked in the draft, seeing the record of Peyton of the last kind of 6 or 7 years, even going back to towards the end of the time in New Orleans, I didn't believe. I didn't believe, as we're going to end up saying now. But the pair of them have made me a believer at this point. I'm with you. I need to see if we're going to really start to talk about him in this very kind of echelon that Denver Broncos fans want us to talk about him in. They say a good stretch and then a playoff game, even if it's a loss where he just goes in there and they look like a proper viable football team, because they're going to have a tough game on the road wherever they go. But if they go there and they don't show themselves up, you're going to look at this and go, right, next 2-3 years, there could be something special here.
Yeah, it's curious, too, because, in the media business, you root for the story, as you guys do. We're all rooting for the Broncos to be the 6th seed and play at the Steelers against Russell Wilson. Mm-hmm. It does not get better than that. They lost to the Steelers at home in week 2, but Russell didn't play in that game because of a calf injury. So that's the game I want to see, and that's a game they can be competitive in. At Buffalo in January, I don't like their chances in that game. Buffalo's averaging, over 4 points a game their last 8 games. Broncos are not equipped to win that type of game against a good team. The one area I push back with Bo Nix when people criticize him, and I understand it, he's a 6th quarterback taken in a draft. But to Brian's point, Sean Payton attached his Hall of Fame legacy to him. Payton has a chance to reach the Hall of Fame if he gets the Broncos to a Super Bowl. I don't even think he has to win it. If he just gets them to a Super Bowl in the AFC after winning one in the NFC, I think he gets in. It may take a while for some godforsaken reason. Mike Shanahan's still not in, but I think he could get in. And trust me, he knows all this. He hinged his legacy here to Bo Nix. So that's why I'm like, this is going to work because Peyton's going to make it work. and the kid has handled that. But let's be clear here. When I push back on Bo Nix, who are his weapons, guys? Who are his weapons?
I've been thinking that the whole time, Troy. Yeah, I've been thinking that the whole time. This all sounds great, but just wait until he actually gets. Imagine Bo Nix with Patrick Mahomes as weapons.
He's got Cortland Sutton, who's a 1 on this team. For me, he's an ideal 2. And after that, it's Troy Franklin, a rookie, Devon Bailey, a rookie. Javonte Williams, their running backs, probably ranks dead last in terms of production from a starting running back. And their tight end is in witness protection. We haven't seen it in weeks. Every once in a while, Atkins will catch a ball. But in terms of pure production from that position, they rank either dead last or 31st. So in this draft, you go out and get a tight end, and you go get one receiver. Let's say they sign, and I don't know that they would, but hypothetically, you sign T. Higgins, and you go draft Tyler Warren from Penn State in the first round. Now you got something. Now, then you take a shot at a running back in the third round. I'd give Audric Estime some play this season before I make that decision. But now you give the kid a chance, because right now, if they don't run the ball, they get boxed in a little bit because they don't have guys who just go out and make plays. Sutton, for the most part, is that guy, but he's not Justin Jefferson. He's not Jamar Chase. He's not that type of player.
Troy, absolutely brilliant stuff. Troy Renck from the Denver Post, from a brilliant Broncos podcast as well. Well, checking out. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thanks, Troy. Good seeing you, man. Good luck with everything.
Appreciate it, guys. Take care. Thanks for having me.
Merry Christmas.
Brilliant stuff. Troy Renck joining us on the rundown here. Talk a bit of Broncos chat, bit of AFC chat. Coming up, we are going to get into the Bills. We're going to get a little bit into the Lions and the NFC as well. Ollie Connolly, though, the brilliant Ollie Connolly from the Read Optional, joins us next to talk Bill Belichick's bizarre move to college football. All right, from one great guest to another, joining the show now from the brilliant Read Optional, one of the great football thinkers, and he happens to be British as well. Obviously, that means I side with him more and more. The brilliant Ollie Connolly joins us now. Ollie, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, good, man, good. We're just discussing how your background with the Beatles and everything looks like a stock image off of Google. Are you actually in that room, or is this like a green room secretly in your underground bunker?
I am in this room, a room where right before we started this, my overhead lights busted and I had to panic running around trying to find a way to light this. So this is a real, actual set piece in my home.
You look stunning, my friend. You look excellent. Look, we've got to start off with the big story of last week for you, as you became an NFL insider once more and broke the news to the world that Bill Belichick was making the stunning move of becoming a Tar Heel and taking over at UNC as their head coach. How did that whole process come about? How are you breaking this huge news to the world that, Bill Belichick is making such a stunning move?
I mean, the idea of him going to college is something that his inner circle have been talking about for months now, almost a year. And I wrote a long piece about this, doing something I don't think you're supposed to do in the insider game, Will, which is basically just reveal your sources up front rather than just saying the source is usually just an agent. I came out and said, maybe not the name, but I specified where it came from. I was speaking to people who are on his staff in New England and guys who are going to be with him at North Carolina now months ago. And they raised this idea of going back to college. And they started really digging through not just the current college game with his son, Steven, who's been the Washington defensive coordinator, but going back through history to try and find the pitfalls of coaches who've gone from the NFL to college. Most importantly for Belichick is trying to find out what went wrong for Bill Walsh when he won 3 Super Bowls, took 3 years out of the game, retired effectively, went into the media, and then came back as kind of the NFL legendary coach to go and coach a college football back at Stanford, a place he'd been before. The difference with Belichick is it's the first ever guy to even win a playoff game to go and coach in college football without having never worked in college before. So it's a really unusual situation, but it's been something that's been on his mind for around 7-8 months.
There's been a lot of breakdown about this 400-page Bible about how the school are essentially bending over backwards and changing their whole, philosophy about how they approach things not even related to the sporting department to make sure the money's there and everything else. But your sense right now, what is success for Bill Belichick at UNC? What is this season and going forward over the next 3 years going to actually look like him being a college head coach?
Winning championships. Maybe not a national championship, probably a bridge too far, but winning the ACC. It's a school that hasn't won their conference for 40 years. And now they've got an unprecedented level of investment that will put them right at the top of the conference. And I made this point in the piece I wrote because one of his staff had told it to me that his boat is not called 333 wins. It's called 8 rings. That's what he cares about. So the idea of an NFL record and would he chase Schuler? And what about Andy Reid coming from behind? We would probably pass him anyway if he went to a rebuilding situation in the NFL. The guy is in the business to win championships. He didn't walk in and say, I won a level of money you've never put into any of your sports. Your basketball team is one of the most famous on earth, and you don't put that investment in there. He didn't ask for that stuff. He didn't ask for 30 staff members and a full new recruiting team and a level of commitment to facilities just to kind of have a passing in the night. I want to develop and grow young men and send them to the NFL and all the stuff he's talking about. That he's going to build this kind of football factory in Chapel Hill. He's there to win championships.
Ollie, this all sounds great, and it's great having you on this program. But when you say championships and I hear ACC, and we're going to really talk college football here, those things don't go together. I mean, Dabo Swinney with Clemson, that happened, but this is a totally different environment. I've seen a lot of media say this since Belichick made this stunning decision. Does he really know what he is getting into? You can do the research. You can talk to people. This is a college football world driven by the SEC, driven by the Big Ten. It is a world with NIL and the transfer portal. This, to me, sounds like a multi-year rebuild for somebody who appears to be at the end of the career. I still don't understand why Bill Belichick makes this move if he thinks he can win championships. Is he going to be better than Georgia, than Oregon, than Texas? Those programs have been doing this for decades to get to this point. USC has been behind the 8 ball for decades. I don't understand how this works. Can you convince me otherwise?
Maybe not convince you otherwise. Look, I don't think he's going to win a national championship. I don't think he's going to run through Georgia and what is like a pseudo NFL franchise on a field on a Saturday. I don't think he's going to do that. But to get past Richmond, who's on the schedule, Bill Belichick can't coach circles around Dabo Swinney. You don't think so? I think those are really complex offenses. He can't figure out the.
If he has the talent, he doesn't have the talent right now.
I mean, North Carolina's recruiting track record has been pretty solid. The early Mac Browns years, the last 2 years, not been so good. But I think one thing that they took away when he went to see Steve in Washington, he was helping a lot with Steve Belichick in terms of preparing cut-ups and game planning during the season. He wasn't just like a proud father wandering around the facility. He was helping them out and learning what college football looks like. You can do it so quick now. If you go to the NFL, which it would still have been his preference, I believe, if you get onto a bad franchise, let's say you just bottom of the barrel, you got to take the Saints job. It's the only one available, the only one interested. Then it's going to be a 4 or 5 year step process to find a quarterback, to get out of salary cap hell. It takes forever to turn those things around if you don't get the right quarterback in the building. In college football, you can do it in 3 days. You can just go in the transfer portal, you can throw the money around, you can get a quarterback, you can start acquiring talent, and they may be terrible at it. They may be really bad at evaluating talent. They may be really bad at closing the deal and getting guys in the door. But if you can get a good enough level of talent to be second tier in the ACC and win 8-9 games, which has been their ceiling for the most part anyways. I do believe that Bill Belichick, with his tactical acumen, with his schematic knowledge, can find a way to maybe squeeze out one more to take them to 10 wins, which would have you not far off competing for an ACC title.
I also think that we are in a college landscape right now where expanded playoffs, the NIL coming in, we've seen so much realignment already over the last decade. You're not telling me North Carolina aren't looking at it a little bit and going, yeah, the action is the SEC, the action is the Big Ten. Those conferences very well could expand again in the next 5 years. If we've got Bill Belichick, if we're winning championships, if we're going to the playoffs as an ACC school, then we should be in that conversation. And I think that's the school's final aim, is to make themselves a power on that top level.
And I like that in a multi-year plan. What I still wonder about Bill Belichick, and a lot of people do, Ollie, is this his final destination? Let's say it does work out. Let's say that Bill Belichick takes North Carolina to a level it's never been before. Does he stay there, or is in the end, is he still trying to get back to the NFL? And it was as simple as nobody wanted to hire him anymore.
I don't think it's that nobody wanted to hire him necessarily. I don't think anyone wanted to hire him for the way he envisaged the job at 72 years old. He'll be 73 years old to start the next NFL season. If someone hired him in this cycle, he'd be the oldest coach in history. To try and walk into a building and say, I want all my staff with me. I want to control the secretaries and the nutritional staff and all the things he asks for when he goes into a building. Not a single franchise alive is going to do that for someone who may be there for 2 seasons. Then you've got obviously all the back channeling stuff with Arthur Blank talking to the other owners and Robert Kraft, talking to all the other owners about how it went down the final years in New England, that I do think, the well was poisoned in the NFL, and this is the next option, which is why some people view it as desperate. But he's gone to a place where he can legitimately win and build a legacy. There is nothing in North Carolina football that cannot be completely overhauled in the Bill Belichick ideology and set the stage for what's next. And a key portion of the reason for doing this was, one, to work with his son again, and two, to give his son a chance to take over the program. If they win an ACC title in the next 2 years, he'll probably just step away and say, well, that was a pretty good job, and hand it off to his son then, when it's more likely that they'll be willing to acquiesce to a succession plan.
Look, let me pick your football brain while we've got you, Ollie. A couple of topics we've not got to in the show yet. One of them being the Buffalo Bills. 8 straight 30-point games. We've only seen that 4 or 5 times in the NFL before, but also back-to-back games where they're scoring and conceding 40 points. They're undoubtedly the most fun team in the NFL, but when you're watching Sean McDermott's side on Sunday night, and we're all enjoying how mad it is, but are you seeing a team that will be in New Orleans in February lifting a Lombardi?
Maybe not lifting the Lombardi, but I think they'll be there. I think they're quite clearly separating themselves at the top of the AFC. I think offensively they can win in any single way you want, right? That they are now this mauling, bruising, power run game. They can tap into Allen as a runner in high leverage spots or in really important games, which just makes them simply indefensible, which is why they're dropping 30 points every week. As you said, and they can drop 40 on good teams when they're allowed to use Allen as a runner when it makes sense to do that. And then defensively, I think the big concern there is every single team who wins a championship, you can go through all of history. What is the common theme beyond quarterback? Do they get home with a 4-man rush? And I just still don't know, in this world of all the blitzing we have, sim pressures, creepers, all the fun terminology, it still ultimately means you've got to get home with 4. You just cannot send 5 or 6 against the great QBs to get through the playoffs. And if you go through their numbers, their pressure rates, their sack totals since week 8, it's really, really disastrously bad. They're worse than the Jags, the Colts. You just go down the line. The Patriots have a better pass rush since week 8 than they do, particularly with a 4-man rush. So that they just need to find some juice from somewhere, whether it's Vaughn in the playoffs, whether it's Ed Oliver taking a leap that he's not done so far this season. That to me is the key. If they don't get pressure, their corners get exposed.
And what about the job Sean McDermott's doing? Because 8 of 8 on 4th down this season. There has been this kind of idea that he's finally clicked with the idea of being aggressive and not just taking the points. But there was that little wobble at the end of the first half where if the Rams had capitalised, if the Lions had capitalised at the end of the first half and gone and scored on that ensuing drive after the missed field goal, I think we'd be asking a lot of questions of Sean McDermott today. Has he done enough to convince you that if he has to go to Arrowhead, if he has to face those kind of superpowers of the NFC, that he will make those big key decisions? Are the tendencies there that he has actually changed who he is as a coach?
Arrowhead worries me. I think that could get into his brain. Everywhere else, I'm good with. If they come to him, I think he's fine. Him going into Arrowhead with the history of that stuff, I think could be a problem. I think he deserves tremendous credit because I think he was considered by the football commentariat fans as kind of Neanderthal-y, right? And kind of old school. And was he holding Josh Allen back? And I don't know if he had like an ayahuasca trip or whatever happened, but he's completely radically overhauled what they do defensively. They become one of the most rotation disguise-based defenses in the NFL, something he's never done before. This is about 18 months ago. He woke up one day and said, I'm into the cool stuff now. Let's have it. So to make that kind of transformation as the guy who's run the same defense basically for 20 years, and then to have on the offensive side, the wherewithal to hire Joe Brady, to give him the full-time job in the offseason. And then, as you mentioned, this year, to kind of look around the league and go, head coaches get an awful lot of credit for going for it on 4th down. They don't really get dinged that much when it doesn't work. All the smart people come out and say they're actually correct. Maybe we should start doing that. I have the best quarterback in the NFL. I have the best player in the league this season in Josh Allen. Maybe when the game's line, it should be in his hands and no one else's and not my defense. That to me is a really meaningful change to do both the stylistic stuff with his side of the ball and then the kind of head coaching CEO stuff that I think he was just bad at for a lot of his career. That to me means that, if there's a big 4th down in the playoffs, I do believe now, if we're not an Arrowhead, that he would do it.
Beautiful. Ollie Connolly, thank you so much for your time. Great man. Check out the wonderful work he does at the Read Optional as well. And up next, we're going to talk some Detroit Lions. Back with the NFL rundown on talkSPORT's dedicated NFL YouTube channel, talkSPORT Endzone. Don't forget to go like, subscribe, leave some comments under this video. Let us know your thoughts and of all the great content we've got coming up over this week as we build up to the Christmas games, of course, live on talkSPORT and talkSPORT 2. We've been very AFC heavy in this show so far. And that's stunning considering we're in a position, Brian, where the NFC might have just been blown wide open. The Detroit Lions suffer their second loss of the season to the Buffalo Bills, maybe the best team in football right now. But it opens up that seed. It leaves Philadelphia level with them on just 2 losses this season. A bunch of other teams waiting in the wings behind them. Minnesota there in their division. Their injury problems a huge factor as well. But when we look at this game on Sunday night against the Bills, a controversial decision from Dan Campbell with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. You're down 10 points and you go for the onside kick. And for me, not even their best onside kick, because when they tried it again towards the end of the game, you see it here. Matt Hollins, it's a standard onside kick to the outside. Ball bounces up, Matt Hollins takes it down to the 5-yard line. Later in the game, they go for a surprise kick up the middle and look much more likely to recover it. So you're not even gone for your best play. You've done it when there's plenty of time left in the game and you're only down 2 scores. And Dan Campbell afterwards, I mean, admittedly, he was pretty reticent about the decision. He owned it.
First onside kick, what kind of motivated you to do that early?
I thought we'd get the possession, you know. I thought we were going to get that ball. And one of Bates' best kicks that I've seen him have, that was a big kicker at the end. You know, I think took a good jump on us. And Hollis made a heck of a play on it. And, you know, obviously now sitting here hindsight after them taking it down to the 3-yard line, yeah, I wish I wouldn't have done that. But it is what it is.
It's funny because Ollie Connolly said something earlier which rang really true with me, in that when he joined us, he said that the nerds still love it, the smart people still love it. Even if you fail, they'll tell you you've made the right choice. Now, that was talking more about the fourth downs, but they've gone for more onside kicks, more fake field goals, more fourth downs than any other team in the NFL over this past 3-4 years whilst he's been head coach. A lot of the time we love it, but it cost them the NFC Championship game against the 49ers when they could have just seen that game out, kicked field goals, and would have won that game. And that onside kick decision from Dan Campbell on Sunday may have been the difference between them coming back in that game and not.
The difference in that game for me, Will, was that Buffalo put up 48 points. Or, you know, Buffalo almost scored 50 points. Buffalo had Josh Allen. Buffalo got out to a huge lead. Look, Detroit has massive injuries. Detroit, there's no stat for this. Detroit is the most injured team in the NFL. They are bleeding injuries. And Dan Campbell's known that. He's been saying this for weeks, that he's trying to make up for that, right? He knows that they have to score, that they can't get it. They're not going to play a 10-7 type of game. That was a bad decision. He owned that decision. Detroit is here, and I will stick by this. Detroit is here because of Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell has completely turned this team around. We had John McClain, a former colleague, a friend of talkSPORT on a few weeks ago. He was saying, you know, he made the point 100% correctly. Dan Campbell has changed the Detroit Lions. They were a joke before. They're not going to get rid of Dan Campbell. He's not going to change his personality. You're not going to be able to trade him or put a bunch of bleach down him and get it all out of him, right? This is who Detroit is, this is who Dan Campbell is. He has to make better decisions than that, but they also win games because he makes those risky gambling decisions. If I'm Dan Campbell, I fine-tune it a little, right? I screw it in a little more. I have a think, as we'd say in the UK, a little longer. That was a really, really, really poor decision, but they didn't lose the game because of that decision. The Detroit Lions are dealing with a lot right now. I mean, they are really banged up. So he's trying to do everything he can to push this team to the #1 seed so they get a week off and get the rest. But I'm concerned about the Lions right now, Will. I look at Philly, and I've been saying Philly for a while now. Mm-hmm. Philly does not lose. Even when they fight, even in a brotherly love, the offense is good enough. The defense is good enough. Eric Sirianni at times is good enough. Philly, for my money, is a team in the NFC right now. And Minnesota is not far behind Detroit at all.
Yeah, these teams all sat at 12-2 after Minnesota's win on Monday night, all with games ahead of them which are very winnable, but also the Lions face the Vikings, which is going to be the Sunday night football game in Week 18. I can't see maybe Rams Seahawks, because that could be for the division.
I think a few weeks ago I was on this show being like, that game could decide everything, and I think you played that down because the Lions were going anywhere. But what if Minnesota steals this division, without J.J. McCarthy, with Sam Darnold, Brian Flores, and they get the #1 seed. What a story that would be.
It's funny because on the other side, we've talked so much about the luck of the Kansas City Chiefs, right? How bad the luck has been for this Detroit Lions side. They lose Ali McNeil, their best interior pass rusher in this game. They lose Carlton Davis, they're probably their second best defensive back in this game. They have 11
David Montgomery. Massive injuries for this team.
They have 16 players on IR right now. They have 11 defensive players on IR that genuinely, when you look at them all lined up together, you maybe need an extra defensive back, but they are a good starting 11 in the NFL. They'd go and win games
They
of
would
football.
beat Carolina, the Las Vegas Raiders, the New York Giants. They would smoke all those teams with their injured, broken players right now.
And I struggle with it because you look at this with the Buffalo Bills, right, in the AFC. They've got 8 straight games scoring 30 points. Only 4 teams have done that in NFL history previously. Offensive juggernauts are the thing right now at the end of the season. Yeah. We are super hyped about these teams. But you go back and you look at those 4 teams who have had that same run that Buffalo have had before. It's the 2007 and 2010 Patriots. It's the 2013 Broncos where Peyton Manning threw 55 touchdowns. And it's the greatest show on turf Rams in 2000. 2 of those teams went to the Super Bowl. 2 of them went to the Super Bowl the following season. None of them won it. They scored an average of less than 14 points. Because when you get in the big games, you need to be good on both sides of the ball. You need to be good in all 3 phases.
And teams have 2 weeks to game plan for you.
I think it's a slight concern with Buffalo that the defense hasn't been good, but they've got a chance to get healthy. I don't think the Lions have any chance to get healthy now, unless they start just pulling guys off the street who are going to be able to suddenly go out there and play high-end football. A Lions team who I've said if they don't go to the Super Bowl, somebody's messed up, I think, are now no longer my favourites in the NFC. I like Philly more than them. I like Minnesota more than them. I like the Los Angeles Rams. You mentioned them earlier on.
Yeah.
I think that Sean McVay, with the trio that he's got on offense, with the young defensive pieces he's got, the secondary concerns me a little, but I like him to go into Detroit and win a shootout. I like him to game plan against the Minnesota defense. I like him to game plan against the Philly defense. I just think as a dark horse, when they've got both their they've got 2 #1 wide receivers, and they've got a quarterback who's suddenly showing the form that he didn't show all season. They are just starting to creep into my consideration.
I feel like it's
I'm
going to say 2 things here. I feel like that's like the Twitter. I'm not going to say anything with the N-word, like nerdy or anything. That's like the hot team right now that people like for a week and they forget about them. They're still like, 8-6 or 7-5. I mean, it's not like they have a great record. I'm going to do 2 things. If Bill Belichick wins championships in the ACC at North Carolina, I will buy Ollie Connolly several pints. And if the Los Angeles Rams, and that's on the record, and if the Los Angeles Rams win the Super Bowl with Matt Stafford,
I
will buy you as many pints as you want in one sitting. I will do that because neither of those things is happening.
Right, 2 things. First of all, that's a lot of pints. Look at the size of me. Secondly, get there. Let's say get there. If they're in the Super Bowl.
You can't have an endless supply, and we'll just stick to ales. We'll do like the cask ales. You can have a few cask ales if the Rams make the Super Bowl.
In the second week of the season on this show, just to wrap this up, I said the Super Bowl I want to see is the Minnesota Vikings against the Buffalo Bills. They've both been there 4 times. They've both lost 4 times. To have the Super Bowl between the 2 4-time losers, one of them will go 1-4 and finally win a championship. One of them will be 0-5 in Super Bowls.
I would love that.
The story of that week would be sensational.
And I would love Sam Darnold. Like, what a story of Sam Darnold winning the Super Bowl. Everybody was wrong. I would love it.
Brilliant stuff, Brian. Thank you so much to you. Brilliant stuff from you, to our guests, to Ollie, to Troy. Sensational stuff from them. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment on this video and on any of the player interviews, any of the other exclusive content we bring you every single week on the NFL End Zone, our exclusive NFL channel, and here on The Rundown.